Hi there, it's Ian here, and you're watching Grumpy Opinions, the show where I'm going to tell you all about what I think of films, TV shows, games, and life in general. Let's get on with the show. Outlander is a show on telly about how the West was conquered by a bunch of time travellers and a hunky Scotsman. Episode 4, The Company We Keep, starts out with Brianna at the Ridge getting really freaked out because apparently an Irishman left wee Jemmy a coin, and instantly she's thinking it must be the dread pirate bonnet. And that's gotten her all in an absolute tizzy, to the point where she thinks that wee Jimmy might have been kidnapped, when actually he just crawled out the door to try and get his ball, just like wee baby German said.
Where'd he go? Oh.
And she ends up having a heart-to-heart with Parsley, who plies her with a bunch of scotch and then tells her about how she wished her own abusive father was dead, and that makes Brie realise that wishing and thinking things doesn't actually make them real. That's a clever bit of reverse psychology there. Yeah, nice one. And later on she ends up burning all the drawings she made of Bonnet, but to be honest, she doesn't look like she's any better for it. Meanwhile, Roger and the Militia pull up to like a small town, or a trading post, or wherever it is, and almost immediately someone starts shooting at them, and then a full-on big gunfight starts. And it turns out they're actually not shooting at him, they're shooting at Isaiah. Yeah, that guy who pledged himself to Jamie back in episode 1. And it seems like he's done some kind of bad wrong. And then, like, some wee lassie runs out, and it's clear that the bad wrong was actually a bit of rumpy-pumpy with the girl. So Roger tries to calm things down, and he ends up like standing down his guys and lets them lock up Isaiah, and he breaks out a barrel of whiskey to make sure everybody calms the hell down. And Jamie and Claire, on the other hand, they're chilling out with a wee baby Bonnie by the river, and then cooing over the baby, and then they end up riding into town and meeting up with the Militia, and Jamie's actually kind of impressed because things seem to be going well, until Roger points out to him about Isaiah. And it turns out he's not only been at this lassie, he's also married to another lassie somewhere else, maybe back at the Ridge, it's not very clear. So Jamie cuts him loose so he doesn't get dead, and since the men there are going to kill him for sure. And he's also kind of cross with Roger about he's handled it all, which seems a little bit unfair. And as soon as the dude realises that the guy's run away, there's a big standoff between Jamie and that guy from Peaky Blinders. But luckily, his big brother comes along and breaks it up, and then him and Jim have a big chat and they strike a deal for all of his dudes to join up to the Militia, because they hate the regulators. And so the job seems like a good one. And Claire goes to see if the townswoman can help out with the baby, and wouldn't you know it, there's a nurse and wifey whose own baby died recently, and turns out her and her husband might want to keep the baby, so that's really nice and neat and tidy, and that storyline seems to be tied up good. Or it would be, if not for the fact that Isaiah's squeeze is also there and folk are getting annoyed with her. Also, while Claire's there, she finds out that her Dr. Rollins info had made it into the papers, because it turns out that the printer ended up printing both sides of that thing that Fergus wrote down. Yeah, lucky, at no extra cost either. Anyway, that night, things are all being a bit chill, everyone's having a bit of a party, Jamie does a wee sword dance, and Claire gets a bit drunk, and the pair end up scooting off to the woods to have a bit of illicit nookie, and Jim's all like, we could always keep that wee bubba, maybe you'd want to have another baby or something, even though we're a bit older, or maybe I could knock you up, and Claire's like, haha, bless, but no chance. Anyway, there's a gunshot, and that crap lassie's just shot herself in the arm trying to kill herself, so they get her home, and Claire talks to her a bit while Jamie goes off to find whiskey, but he's going to, but then he bumps into Isaiah, who's conveniently just arrived exactly then, and he proclaims his love, and it's decided that Roger will actually take Claire and the twins home after they secret these two lovers away. And they manage it kind of half-heartedly, even though Peaky Blinders bit looks like he's a bit cross and maybe he figured out what happened. But still, in the end, things seem to be going okay. Kind of. So what did I think? Well, this week was kind of interesting. If maybe a little bit tad uneventful overall. I know that's a funny thing to say about a week where quite a few things happened, but it just seemed to be just a wee bit threadbare, but, not bad. And it had a theme that I'm noticing really emerging through this season, and it ties back into what I said back in my Outlander preview videos, and that's that this season's really about conflict, inner conflict, and it's also clearly about finding shades of grey in situations. Things aren't as simply black and white, good and bad, as things used to be in the olden days. And as well, you've got the situation obviously with Myrta and the regulators and Jamie and Tryon and all that business. But we've also had the business last week with the Beardsleys, which was all about whether or not, it was okay or bad to torture a guy who was abusive, or they maybe should mercy kill him rather than letting him suffer. But then at the same time, the person did it. Are they a good person or a bad person? It's all shades of grey. Things are complicated. And this week we've got the situation of Isaiah, which is a little bit, less life-threatening, but let's face it, he's basically a married guy who's now, gone off and knocked up another girl out of wedlock, even though that girl was also promised to, marry someone else. And yeah, both of those marriages were arranged, so it's not like anyone's breaking anyone else's heart. At least, according to what Isaiah says, because nobody ever lies, right? Anyway. As Claire says, like in her final voiceover, it's hardly fair for them to judge somebody for doing basically the same thing that she did when she ended up marrying Jamie behind Frank's back, across the endless voids of space and time. And it was an interesting, as I said, a slightly clunky storyline, and it did get there in the end. Although I do think things were tied up just a wee bit too neatly. But again, it wasn't bad. And when I say neatly, I mean uh, I don't think I didn't like see these little looks and this thing and the fact that you're going to cast a guy like Ned Dennehy to play somebody, you're not going to get him in for 2 seconds. Although obviously, I mean, I did say that about Fairbanks, who was basically playing a guy who was lying on the bed acting with one half of his face. And yeah, sure, you needed a good actor to do that, but they weren't using him much. But I feel it unlikely that they're going to cast somebody, especially like the Peaky Blinders guy with a really awesome face. This is a guy who's clearly going to cause problems later on. Also, as ever, total massive props to the actors in this for doing a good job. I mean, yeah, we had Roger doing a bit of singing again, twice I think, actually, 2 different songs, because he's a good singer. And then massive props again to Lauren Lyle for showing up and totally stealing the scenes that she was in, totally just chewing up the scenery, a bit of drunk acting, and her and Sophie like sitting having a heart to heart. More of this stuff, please, show. And again, yeah, Sophie was good as well. I mean, I feel sorry that they're not quite giving her enough to do other than look pensive or horrified, but I presume that's building towards something, building towards some kind of storyline. Although it is something that I'm slightly worried about. Because you see, she's already faced up to Bonnet. She's already took her life in her own hands, because she tried to blackmail Lord John into a proposal. I mean, this is somebody who's taken control of her life after like the tragedy of getting like raped by a pirate, and this is the season we're seeing her kind of regress a little bit. I mean, I know that's not necessarily unrealistic, but and there's limited time to tell like a story from a book this size and a show that's only 12 episodes. But it kind of feels like we're getting sometimes the Cliff's Notes and sometimes we're just peddling more. Another thing, what's with all the names in this? I mean, we've got Isaiah, Josiah, Keziah, Pariah, Mariah, Jambalaya. I mean, honestly, it's getting ridiculous. Like, why can't one guy just be called Derek and the other one be called Biff? I mean, that would just make life easier. Also, why is so much time being spent on these people? I mean, this guy, he's a new guy. I mean, didn't we have anyone left over from previous seasons that we could have used for that? I mean, I'm sure there was somebody at least. And I hate to say it, but I feel like we've traded in wee Ian for like a couple of far less interesting versions of him around about the same age. I mean nothing against these actors, or in the case of like the twins, this actor, because they're doing their thing fine. But it feels just a wee bit naff. I mean, probably just because I just don't really care about these characters because I don't know them. I mean, especially Deaf Keziah. I mean, I don't care if he gave his trousers to kittens. I mean, he's just not that exciting. And Josiah, I mean, he could be interesting if we saw him do anything, but we haven't really, and he's only had a couple of scenes. And as I said, Isaiah, this guy, he's just an idiot. I mean, he's daft enough to return here without even hiding his face or hanging back at the back of the crowd, and he nearly gets a whole load of folk killed. And also, like, pulling a gun on Jamie at the end of the episode. I mean, how many times were guns pulled on people this week and nothing ever happened? That kind of bugged me. I mean, it's like threatening that somebody might get hurt in a show and it never happens. And I know that Jamie says at the end,
You can find you want to shoot me. So do I.
that's almost literally voicing the voice of the audience there because we all know he's not going to shoot him. Because it's Jamie and also because he's a good guy, which kind of makes it silly because we've seen it happen so often. And also, how do you try and shoot yourself in the heart and hit yourself in the right arm? I mean, it's not only on the wrong side of your body. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. I mean, unless she slept with a gun, maybe, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure she's probably a bungler with firearms. It's believable, but it seemed a bit silly. But I mean, this has been done better before. I mean, look at something like what happened to Beethoven's son, and it happened in real life. But if you see the movie Immortal Beloved, like they actually have that as part of the storyline, and you should totally watch that because it's an absolutely brilliant film. And Gary Oldman is one of the greatest actors of all time. And also, right, see when they first rode into town, nobody actually came out. And then Roger calls out. And then magically somebody from inside that house managed to see Isaiah, got him and his mates to and son brothers and whatever to load up their guns and start firing, all within about a minute of them rocking up. And yet nobody else in the entire rest of that town popped out to say hi. That seems super convenient. It seemed like a total just don't think about it moment because it made no sense to me. And I'm not saying this was a bad episode, but I'm getting a sense also that this season has a definite touch of the monster of the week, if you know what I mean. I mean, if you don't know what I mean, that's like how in old shows like Star Trek or like X Files or something, then you'd have every week there'd be like a standalone adventure with a new monster of that week, monster of the week. And in broader terms, that means that each of these plots, while loosely it's collected like a big arc, then it's also about having many adventures that are kind of standalone. And we're 4 episodes into 12, so we're a full third of the way through the show so far this season. And it feels like it's not in a hurry to actually get anywhere. I mean, maybe that's the way the book's written, but The problem with it is that I feel like we're exactly in the same place we were at the start of last week's episode. Only now, you know, it's, a couple of things have happened, but they're not very important things. I mean, put it this way, effectively, Jamie is out with some dudes and everyone else is back on the ridge. So things have kind of gone in a circle. I mean, not to be funny, but at the beginning of last week's episode, you could have just started with whatever happens next week and had a little line of voiceover saying, Jamie had ridden to the ridge, and Roger and Fergus rounded up every available man and had them ride out to meet him at Hillsborough. And then, sorry about that, but then, frankly, we'd be 2 episodes further ahead, and there wouldn't really have been much change to Jamie's storyline or really to the people involved. I mean, there hasn't actually been anything big and major that's happened. So it's not like anyone's grown or changed. And obviously, Jamie still thinks Roger's a total putz because let's face it, he is. He's an idiot. He's only good for singing and quoting clever things, and that's about it. And I really don't know what the show's trying to do with him at this point, because I presume it's trying to make us feel sorry for him and show him trying to do stuff and trying to forgive him for being such a total arsehole last season. But all it's doing is actually making him look less capable than he was when he rode up like at the end of last season, like a great big Byronic hero on top of a horse. And I know that for book readers this might not matter since there's like probably something that's going to happen down the line that'll make sense of this. He'll have some kind of arc or it's building towards something, him doing some heroic thing or something. But as a non-book reader, I honestly don't know where this is going. And no spoilers in the comments, please. I don't want you to tell me what actually happens, but just that's the problem with it. And yeah, that's really all I've got to say about things this week. So, I mean, as always, let me know what you think in the comments. If you think I'm right or if I'm wrong. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Follow me on Twitter and join the Facebook groups. And if you can spare it, please sign up to my Patreon. So, till next time, I've been Ian, and these have been my grumpy opinions.